Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talk Nerdy. Today is Monday, March 21st, 2022, and I'm the host of the show, Cara Santa Maria. And before we dive into this week's episode, I do want to thank those of you who make Talk Nerdy possible each and every week. Remember, Talk Nerdy is and will always be 100% free to download, and that's because I rely on a crowdfunding model. So yes, I sell ads on the show, but I think probably a bigger support, and not probably, definitely a bigger support is listenership support from people just like you. So I want to give a shout out to my top patrons on the show. They include the coolest people in the universe, Daniel Lang, David J. E. Smith, Mary Neva, and the coolest people in the galaxy, Brian Holden, Christopher Pitts, Dudas Infinitas, Gabriel F. Jaramillo Gonzalez, June Sapara, Leonard Prince, and Ulrika Hagman. And there's, of course, so many more of you who have supported so much over the years. Let me see if I can find some of the top supporters there from a lifetime model. Other than those, I just gave a shout out to, let's see, Jeffrey Sewell, incredible, Rob Schreck, Juan, Charles F. Bleal, maybe it's Blale, Juan Gutierrez, Ken Pfeiffer, David Compton, Jacob Rochester, Doug Petitpied, Howard, Christian Jeffrey, Wolf Witt, Nick Hilton. Gosh, so many amazing folks who have really supported the show in incredible ways. You make the show possible for people who can't afford to support to be able to still get that content for free. So thank you so much from the very, very bottom of my heart. All right, let's talk about today's show. I am actually going to be chatting with another content creator, but quite a different content creator. Her name is Estefannie. It's spelled Estefannie. You've got to look her up if you don't know her. Check out her YouTube page, her Instagram channel. She's a computer scientist, a trained computer scientist who loves to make things. She engineers things and then shares her findings and her prototypes and her experiments online. She calls herself a self-proclaimed Imagineer. And when she was in college, she actually started the Computer Science Girls Organization to help reach women in the computer science department, to empower them to connect together, and to really promote women in STEM, especially in engineering and math. So she's super inspirational, you guys. Fascinating, fun, and I'm just so excited to share her work with you. So without any further ado, here she is, Estefannie. Well, Estefannie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited today.
I am too. I'm so excited to talk about your work, about your career, about your interests, and just kind of learn a little bit more about you. So you're kind of like, you're an engineer, a maker, a tinkerer, a doer of all things. How would you usually describe yourself when people ask what it is that you do?
That's a great question. I'm still trying to figure that out. I was, I guess, trained as a software engineer or a scientist. Okay. But then later I learned how to be an actual engineer. And now when you mentioned I tinker. So I like to think that I'm sort of like my version of what in the 90s an inventor looked like, or the 80s, 90s, kind of like the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids inventor. So I like to think that I am like a wannabe inventor like that. Yes.
I love that. And so you actually were born and grew up in Mexico, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And were you stumbling upon these interests in your kind of earlier ages?
No, actually, I didn't know I could do any of these things. I was only exposed to pop culture, and like pop culture as in like, oh, I want to be Madonna when I grow up kind of thing. And I did watch those movies, the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, where there's like this inventor or like even Flubber or whatever, but I thought I would have to go to like some Ivy League college and be a man to be able to do those things. So I never saw myself as them, but I definitely enjoy them. Yeah.
And so you moved then to Texas. That's also where I grew. I grew up in Texas. So you moved to Texas
Ooh.
when you were a little bit older. We both went to university there, but I was in North Texas
Okay, yeah.
at UNT, and you were in Houston. So tell me a little bit about that. I mean, that must have been a big transition.
It was, but also I was like ready for that. I think, yeah, I wanted a change in my life. It felt like the U.S. was the way to go, and I had family there. They opened the doors for me, so I said definitely yes. It took a long time to be able to go to the University of Houston as an international student because I didn't know how hard it was going to be. But yeah, after a few years of community college and trying to get scholarships and student loans, I was finally able to transfer to the University of Houston, where I had already declared my major to computer science and mathematics.
Okay, so something did happen between sort of when you were still living in Mexico and coming to Texas and kind of starting to dedicate yourself as a student, where you discovered computer science and math.
Yes. Oh, yes. It was in Houston when I discovered computer science and math. Actually, I had to start from from scratch at the community college. None of my classes were transferred from Mexico to Texas, so I had to start from scratch, and I failed that for like that test to the I guess enrollment test like terribly. So I had to start like math from like the lowest they
Right.
had. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think, oh, sorry. Yeah.
Oh no, you're good.
No.
I was just gonna say, I think that's kind of not uncommon for a lot of, so-called quote non-traditional students. I also went to community college before I started at the university level, and I hear
Yeah.
this story a lot from especially young adults who attend commuter colleges. That sort of the community college experience really does help them reorient because we cannot assume that even in like certain American high schools that we're getting the appropriate training or the appropriate background that we need to be ready for some of these college level classes.
Yes, that's exactly right. And also, I think so. We're not ready. And also, how can we know at that age what we want to do?
Absolutely.
I didn't know. I didn't know until
Yeah.
much later. Yeah. So I started math from scratch. And that's after like the second or third class. I was getting closer and closer to geometry or whatever. I was like, wow, I think I really like math. And I didn't know that about myself because I grew up thinking I was bad at math. So yeah, it was until community college that I realized that I really liked math, and I didn't know how I was going to apply that to a major because I was like, I don't think I should study math. Maybe I should. I don't know how. I also didn't know how that was applicable in the real world. It was just mathematics. I was like, how? I mean, I still don't see. I like it, but I still don't see how I'm going to use it. um and it was again Hollywood that helped me find my path. I was watching the Pixar Story. It's a documentary about just Pixar and the founders, and that's when I found out that the founders were all computer scientists. And I thought that was
Yeah.
really cool. Yeah. And so I just went on Wikipedia. I looked up what computer science was. I read the description. It scared me. I was like, I don't know. Okay, I'm going to try it. That was it. I just did it. And I took my first programming class and I loved it. And I guess the rest is history.
Oh, I love that story so, so much. I'm curious, from
Yeah.
your perspective, how much do you feel like the sort of, I don't know if we want to call it like imposter syndrome
Oh,
or the
yeah.
experience of feeling like, this is not a path for me. How much of that do you think really was steeped in how culturally we raise our young girls, how culturally we treat girls and kind of put different expectations on them?
Well, ooh, that's a really good question. I think math is the one that like mathematics helped me know that I could do computer science because like I said, I just didn't know I could do math. I thought I was bad at it. I was told consistently by my mom that I was not good
Yeah.
at math, and I
Interesting.
believed
So
it.
mom was a big influence there. What about your teachers? What about other students?
I think I already came in with a very defeated attitude towards it, so teachers could also see that. But I don't think I recognize a teacher specifically saying I was bad at math. It was more of like at home, and I just thought, well, fine, I'm one of those people that are not good at math because apparently in our, I think all cultures, well, at least I can speak for Mexico, in the U.S., but it feels like you're either good at math or you're bad at math, and if you're bad at math, then you're probably good at writing or something like that.
Right. There's
Um,
that sort of very binary view, but I do worry that so often it's the little boys that are told they're good at math and that are fostered in that sort of math and engineering way. And girls aren't expected to have those kinds of skills. And so they're not built up in that way and they don't develop the kind of self-esteem that we need to think we're good at this.
exactly. Yes, I definitely I can see that.
Yeah,
There's definitely a
yeah.
divide, and it's very binary, like you said.
It's so
Yes,
good then to hear that you were able to overcome that when you noticed in yourself a passion and an interest that you were able to say, you know what, I'm going to try. And even if it feels hard, and even though other people have said that maybe this isn't the path for me, I'm going to prove that to myself first.
exactly. Oh yes. Yeah.
I love that so much. And so, okay, at this point now, you're in Texas. Oh, and I have to know, were you already bilingual when you were living in Mexico? Were you already speaking English fluently, or did you have to work on that when you came to Texas as well?
Well, I guess I could say I already knew it well enough to be able to, like, I was bilingual, but I had never had to speak it or listen to it for like all day. So yeah, I think the first few months or first year it was really hard to, yeah, just do that switch of like, oh, all day English at school, or yeah, that was hard. That was really, really hard.
Yeah. And how about now? Now that you've kind of been there, you've done that, you've been in the States for quite some time, and you're doing all of this amazing work. Do you find that you kind of speak Spanish at home and speak English in like more public settings? Do you find that you're more of like a Spanglish speaker? And also, I'm curious, what language do you usually dream in or think in?
That's great. So for dreams, I want to start there.
Uh huh.
I think I think they're usually like not non-language, just I guess images
Mm,
or ideas and thoughts. I
hmm.
don't think they're in a language, but I remember there was one time when I was studying French and I was like using a lot of those little French phrases and sayings I was learning. So that made me think about that. And I was like, wait, I had a dream in French. That means I've never dreamt in any other language, I think, because this is the first time.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so weird and cool.
Yeah, yeah. So that's for dreams. I think there's definitely a lot of. I think I feel like I was much better at English during college, and then I relaxed a lot more afterwards, working as a software engineer. When I realized that a lot of us were international, and it was like, oh, I guess I don't have to try too hard anymore, and maybe my English just got worse after that.
Gotcha, gotcha. So you were able to fall back on some of that kind of that native Spanish speaking, and is that how you talk to your family?
Yes, in Spanish.
Yeah,
And
and
also,
of
but if
course,
I have to, oh, sorry, just real quick, if I have to explain anything about math or programming, anything that I've studied, I cannot say it in Spanish at all. I couldn't even translate it.
ah,
Yeah.
oh, interesting because you learned all of that information in English.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, how interesting. And of course, you still live in Houston?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so you get to use Spanish all the time in Houston. It's the same as LA, right? Like there are a lot of Spanish speakers.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. There's a lot of
Yeah.
Spanish speaking. Yeah.
That's great. That's so great that you get to sort of like carve out your own way, be really authentic to yourself, respect, value, and celebrate your culture and your passions, and utilize them kind of throughout your day. So now I'm curious. Where do you find yourself? What does a normal day look like? What is your kind of quote job, if you could call it that? It's such a fun, weird thing when you're sort of somebody who makes your own way.
Yeah. Wow. Every day is different now for me, but I think what I try to fall back into is that, dream of trying to be this idea of what I thought an engineer or scientist looked like when I was little, which is like, oh, that crazy inventor like Doc from Back to the Future or something like that, and build whatever. But I think that's the ideal day where I spend most of my time. Designing an idea and then finding all the parts and trying to figure it out and failing miserably many, many times until I get it right. I think that is a lot of my time, but also now it's creating the content around it because
Right.
I create videos and Instagram posts, and that does take a lot of time, but I also like it because it makes me much I think it makes me a better engineer in a way because I have to better document everything and think about how would I explain this to a little kid if I had to. And I think it really makes me simplify the project and my thoughts and ideas. So I think it's a very good. I like that process. So I would say um, right now it's probably 70% creating the videos and content, and then just 30% the actual build.
Yeah, the building itself. I kind of want to go down both of those paths with you. Talk a little bit about the making and the building, but also talk about the process of content creation. And obviously, we live in a capitalist society. We have to pay the rent and the bills, and we've got to figure out a way to make money doing the things that we love. And I think it's really inspiring when I see, especially a lot of younger people, being able to figure out how to put food on the table, doing what they love to do. So maybe we'll start there. I don't want to make assumptions. Like I think about my podcast and I think about the model around that. I've got a Patreon, I sell ad space on my podcast, and these are the ways that I get paid to be able to have fascinating conversations with fascinating people. Is it a similar model for you when you make videos or when you post behind the scenes content on Instagram, that you're working with different brands, or are you relying more on crowdfunding? Like how are you able to monetize the work that you do?
Yeah, it's I've been very lucky to work with incredible brands, and that's how I get sponsorship deals
Mhm.
on Instagram or YouTube. And but I also am very careful with well, not careful, but I am very picky on who I work with because I
Right.
think it has to be very organic, and I also believe in their mission or what they're doing. So it's I guess there's a lot of filtering that has to go through. But yeah, I've been very, very lucky to work with some incredible brands, especially like the ones who are into, promoting women in STEM, women of color in STEM. In fact, like, well, one of my favorite ones is LA because they are helping double the number of women and triple the number of women of color in STEM by 2030. And I'm like, that's exactly what I've been wanting to do. Actually might have one to segue into when I started computer science girls in college, but it's exactly that. I noticed there's not enough people, not enough women in STEM, and especially not women of color in STEM. And I was like, how can I help? How can I do this? And it's been years of that. And then they found me and I found about their mission. I was so excited to work with them. And I was like, yes, I want to help. Let's do this. So
Oh,
yeah.
that's so great. That's so great to
Yeah.
hear about that partnership. And of course, that is other than just doing the work that you do and inspiring young women and getting them involved, you also do a lot of outreach, right? You speak a lot at different organizations. You work in like hackathons and maker fairs and different places where of course showing off all of your fun builds is a big part of it. But it does seem like part of your mission is to inspire other girls to maybe not think that they can't do this, but to see that, hey, you could do this, and look, here's an example of somebody doing this.
Yes, exactly. Right. Yes, I think, and it all came from a place where I was thinking about in college, oh, who do I admire or who do I want to be in the next few years or so? And I really couldn't think of any woman, especially not any woman of color either. But like it was a very like almost like an existential crisis moment. I was like, what is this
Yeah.
life? Um, and so I decided to, kind of like, all right, well, what am I going to do about it? What if I could inspire one girl I'm good. I changed one person's world, and that's great, hopefully. So I started the Computer Science Girls Club at my university to try to, well, that was also to try to keep them in computer science, because I noticed that a lot of my female classmates would switch over to biology or other sciences, mainly because we had already taken a lot of science. But it is computer science is very, it's it's a very harsh environment for women.
Oh, yeah. It's
And
sort of, we know the numbers in computer science are worse than any other STEM field. It goes
yeah,
kind of in order from like the more behavioral sciences like psychology to biology to chemistry, then maybe math or physics, and certain
mhm.
physics are worse than others. And then computer science is like dead last. Like
Yeah,
it's all dudes.
yeah, all dudes who also are like not very nice to women.
Right.
Or among themselves even. It's just so competitive and so petty and so just your typical, nerd of like, well, actually, and you're like, ah. So I noticed I was going through that, and then I noticed, oh, there's some other girls in my class. Where are they? And then I would never see them again. And then I found out they were doing biochem or something else. And I talked to the department, and they had numbers. They told me, yeah, we started with about like 400 women who enroll, but then by the sophomore year, it's only like 20% of them, and then by graduation, it's only about 2 people who graduate. Like 2 girls.
Wow.
And I was
What
like,
a
okay,
bummer.
that's it's not good. So I was like, what if there's a safe space? What if I love to do parallel work. I love to study with my friends. So what if I do a club where we can do that, and it's catered to women, but if guys want to join, they can, but it's a safe environment. Like that's the only thing that I want to enforce, like safe and comfy environment. And that worked out really well. And after 1 year or like 1 semester of doing that, that's when I spoke to one of my advisors and talked about, well, what is the actual issue? How can we get more women interested? So that's when we started doing a little bit more outreach to high schools and middle schools, and taking a booth into like career fairs at the Natural Science Museum and things like that. And that's when I was like, well, I think I'm very passionate about this too.
Oh, I love that. And so you were the founder of Computer Science Girls, and since then, I mean, you're no longer in school. Is it safe to assume that the torch has been handed off to other incredible young women to kind of continue the cause?
Yes, and I'm very happy about that. I honestly didn't know if it was going to still survive, but it's still going strong since 2013. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. So there's really some legacy there and something really to be able to look back on and be proud of. Do you ever work with them? Do you ever go back and like give talks or kind of meet up with them?
Yes, I have. Whenever, if they want to and they invite me, I definitely go and do a workshop or a talk or something. Yes, for sure. If they
So
want to, I don't
fun.
want to be the one who's like always going back to school. Like, oh hi guys, these were my prime years.
Yeah, for sure. But you've had the opportunity to really travel all over the world, kind of sharing your message and showing off your builds and also talking about this experience. What have been some of the most kind of I don't know, meaningful or impactful experiences that you've had?
Ooh, I think there was one talk that I was invited to do in Ireland, and this was probably the largest audience I've ever talked to, and it was very scary, but it was great. And I think it was very meaningful because I had to work on it a lot when they told me that my audience was going to be from 7 to 17 years old.
Oh, wow, young. Oh, yeah, that's really different.
Yeah, so I was like, how do I get the 7-year-olds to pay attention while keeping the 17
Mhm.
year old, engaged? So that was like the hardest one for me, but also the most. It was very fulfilling, and I did cater a little bit more towards the younger audience because I think like I was like, well, if I want to impact, I think the older crowd, they already like engineering because they're here. It was an event about building things. So I
Okay.
was like, if they're already here, I think they're already kind of like this. So I can throw in a little bit of YouTube or Instagram, which they like, but I think I'm going to target the younger audience, and it paid off. So I wasn't sure, of course, because when you're giving a talk, you're just doing, you have no idea like what the reactions are. There might be some laughter, but the stage is so far away from them. I don't know. It was
Right.
very scary. But right afterwards, though, and this wasn't scheduled, I get off stage, and then there was a line of kids wanting to take a picture with me and ask me questions, and they brought their projects to show it to me. And that, like, I almost cried. I was like, whoa, this is amazing. Yes, show me your project. And I got to talk to each and one of them. And I think that's my favorite memory from all my talks.
Oh, I love that. I can imagine that kind of feedback really makes this all worthwhile. You had mentioned before if you could affect change in just one young girl, but probably safe to assume that you get letters, or maybe I should say emails and messages, and a lot of kind of feedback, and also girls coming up to you after your talks.
Yeah, well, I think it was mainly that talk. I don't
Hmm.
know if I don't get a lot of emails or letters really. They were very young too. They were like a 7-year-old, or they were with their dads.
Cute. Yeah.
Usually, yeah, very very cute with like little girls. I think that was like what got me really excited. They all wanted to see my project, or they wanted to show me their project, and that to me was like, whoa, this is so cool. This is like how excited I was about Barbies when I was little, but now this is about engineering, which is even better. And if I had known, I'd probably also build like this whole dollhouse with a functioning elevator for my Barbie back then, if I knew I could.
Oh,
So
heck yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome. So earlier when we were talking about sort of your process, we talked about some of the builds, which we'll get to in a second. And then we talked about how it is that you've made this into a career. What we didn't really talk about is crowdfunding. Have you found that has been a part of your approach? Do you have like a Patreon? Do you kind of reach out to your audience, get feedback from your audience, and help that guide any of your decisions?
Not yet. I've been working towards building that Patreon page. It's just been very tricky for me because uh I do have a very large audience of kids, or younger audience, and I I I wouldn't want them to miss out on anything because there's a wall, like a monetary wall.
Right, right. So you want to make sure everything is open access.
Yes. So
Yeah.
I do my video, and then I write a blog about it, and I make like this a whole like list of how I built it, and I share the code, I share the schematics, I share everything online for free. So that's where I'm like, if I were to do a Patreon, which is what I've been working on thinking about, it would be something that they wouldn't miss out on. Like no more
Yeah.
content they would miss out on. It would probably be like, oh, buy me a coffee kind of thing.
No, I feel you, and I'll tell you what, I have similar concerns, which is why my Patreon is very much like each and every episode. I always say this at the front of the show, so I'm sure my listeners are rolling their eyes right now because they're like, you already said this once. Each and every episode is and will always be 100% free to download, and I just rely on the support of my really incredible listeners. So most of the people who support my show on Patreon literally just do it out of the goodness of their heart. They don't get anything extra for it. I might have, an ad-free version of a download or something like that, but ultimately, even before I offered that perk, most of the people who support me on Patreon literally just do it because they want to support creators. And I think it's so cool that there's a robust community of people out there who do that, knowing that they're contributing to something that they could get for free, but in being able to support because they're in a financial position to do so, they're offsetting and they're allowing people who couldn't otherwise afford it to be able to consume it for free.
Yes, that's amazing. So yeah,
Yeah,
we're
so
on the
there's
same page.
options.
I get
Love it.
to,
Yeah,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
options. There's definitely options available, which is great to hear. So, okay, I want to know about some of these builds. I want to know what are some of the things that you
Ooh.
first started doing, how have they evolved, and maybe point us to some of your favorites over the years.
It's usually the favorite ones are like, oh, usually the one I'm working on right now.
Right? Yeah, the one that's in your mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, where do I start? I think it all it all started with me making computer science tutorials online because I was actually studying for an interview with Google and I didn't feel like studying. And I remember, well, the only way I know if I know something is if I can explain it to someone else. And the scariest place on earth is the internet, and because people are going to correct me. And so I'm going to do it. So I put my first tutorial on YouTube and I liked it. And I was like, oh, I'm going to do more so I can study. But then it was within a month or two when I decided to play with electronics for the first time. I was like, I want to make like a cool, like robotic pumpkin for Halloween. And then I was like, oh, and I can document it and put it on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. Why not? Just put it there, throw it in there. And I loved it. I loved it so much that I no longer cared about my interviews. And I decided to make more builds and stay in the job that I was in and just do that over the weekends, build projects and put them and share them online. And it's just been like, it's been a lot of learning process for me of like, what does it mean? Like, is it just a build that I want to do, or is it a build that the audience is going to like, or like, is it a trend? So I've gone through a lot of different stages of creating those builds for the content. But I feel like right now it's more about, yeah, like what is the idea behind this build? For example, the one that I'm now I finished, but now I'm just working on the video, is a build that I did for my cats. I have 2 cats and I love them very much. And I'm a helicopter parent apparently because I one of them is an older cat. He's 11. And the only way I knew if he was healthy or not is through his bowel movements.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Just like people, of course.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like how, and it was easy to track that when he was the only cat. But then I adopted Luna like a couple years after, and I realized I was very happy that I was able to train them to, well, first of all, that they became friends. And then second, that they could use the same litter box. And once I got that done, I was like, oh no, how am I going to know when Teddy Bear is sick or not, or Luna? And now I don't know because there's 2 cats and double the amount of stuff in the litter box.
Yeah.
So the project is, it's extremely over-engineered, but here's what I did. I put a camera in. I built like a cupboard, like a yeah,
Sure,
like a little, okay,
a little cupboard,
a little cupboard, and I put the litter box in there, and I made it so that I could mount a little infrared camera and a thermal camera and some infrared lights. It looks like little stadium lights, but tiny, and they're all infrared, so the cats won't see it. They won't be bothered by it. But every time any cat walks in, the camera takes a picture, and it's infrared, so I don't have to have any lights on. So infrared, it just makes it like it's almost like night vision. So it takes a picture, and I have a computer right there, a little small computer running a detection algorithm that I wrote. Basically, it detects which cat is there at the moment with using machine learning. So the cat enters. We know whether it's Luna or Teddy. And then based on the time, I have way too much data on them right now on how long it takes them to poo or pee.
This is very useful. Somebody from some research lab somewhere is going to call you for that data because they're trying to develop some medical intervention for cats who are constipated.
I hope so, because I have a lot of data now. But yeah, I had to average out the times and see, okay, if it's, let's say, I think it was like a minute and a half. If it's past the minute and a half, then it's definitely poo. And so it's kind of an assumption, but it has been working fine. So yeah, it detects a cat, and then it detects whether it's pee or poo. And then why not, while they're at it, I take their temperature, and I save all the data, like, okay, so Teddy Bear went to the bathroom at whatever time this day, and he did poo or pee, and this was their temperature. And so I save all of that, and I can see it on my phone.
Yeah, that's interesting because, of course, oftentimes just big data is the first step to then developing patterns and seeing patterns in the noise and understanding, if one of your cats has a very particular pattern and then something happens and they're thrown off of their pattern, it could alert you to something going on with their health before other behavioral alerts are given to you.
Exactly. Yes. So
I
that's
I
the
love
whole
that.
idea. Cool.
That's so cool. And so, okay, this is fun. This is what you're working on now or most recently worked on. What about like for people who are listening who are thinking, I want to make something, but I don't know how to make stuff? Or do you have any sort of tutorials that can help somebody maybe get a taste for this maker vibe that are maybe kind of new to it?
Yes, I think it was an ambitious project, but I think it's a great project to get started with all the makery skills. And it
Hmm.
was my Daft Punk helmet I made.
Okay.
And I did write like a whole step-by-step tutorial. Um, and I think that was the first the project where I first ever 3D printed, and
Oh,
I
cool.
learned how to. It was like, okay, this project base, I want a helmet, and I don't know how to 3D print, so I figured out, like, because I really wanted that helmet to 3D print, and I shared like all the files, everything. And then I had to learn about sanding and water sanding and using different like car repair type of products to make it very smooth and clean and shiny. And that's all the work that I did with my hands, kind of thing, like with 3D printing and a lot of different materials. And then the code and the LEDs, like, I mean, the code is online. I put it all online. It should be as easy as download it and put it on the same computer board that I use. I think most of my projects should be ready to go. And if I wanted to get started, I would do that. And then you have the code to play with and change it up a bit. Hey, I only want pink lights. You can do that. Or that kind of, and I think that would be it's a fun project that then you're like, wow, I can wear it and it's cool.
I love that. And so, obviously coming from a more, mathematical and then computer science sort of focused background, of course, a lot of these builds have both the software and the hardware component to them. Was it hard for you to like learn how to make stuff with your hands when coding was maybe and maybe I'm wrong, but sort of more your comfort zone?
Yeah, I think making with my hands, just it feels very natural to me. I think I like it. It's part of the process. I think um I start with the making of the thing before I start programming, because it actually helps me think about how I'm going to program this. It's almost like a meditation for me. There was also the time where, and this is a very simple, I think, like, okay, maybe this is for like, oh, at home with your kids, if you want to build something together. There's like a gingerbread house I made, like a smart gingerbread house. And that was fun to just make the actual gingerbread house and then figure out, like, ooh, how am I gonna put the lights on, like as if they were Christmas lights, but they're just LEDs, and like make the gingerbread men dance around the gingerbread people dance around the gingerbread house, and open and close the door. And I think yeah, that's also another fun little project of seeing like how you can integrate um, electronics or robotics and programming into something as like normal, I guess, as a
Hmm.
gingerbread house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, do you have any recommendations maybe for parents who are listening to the show who do have younger kiddos who are interested in getting involved in coding and making, like where they can start? Or, any books or any like products? Like, do you like little bits, or are there different kind of areas where you think, okay, if I were a mom and I was trying to like get my kid ready, this is what I would get them for Christmas.
Yes. Oh, okay. There are books, but I'm all for free stuff. So
Oh, love it. Yeah.
online, yes. I think my favorite resource for kids and parents, and for myself too, because that's how I learned a lot. There's a mini computer brand that writes a lot of tutorials and fun projects like that for kids, called Raspberry Pi.
Yeah.
um yeah, so I think that's where I would start. Raspberry Pi has like really cool projects for little kids to get started. There's also Instructables, That's I don't know if you're familiar with that website, but it's like, it's like a people can upload their tutorials there about anything, and like even braids, how to braid your hair. But then there's a lot of electronics projects, and they have a category for it. So yeah, I think I would just go online and find those type of tutorials or resources.
For sure. And how often do you use Raspberry Pi in like your work now?
Well, the actual computer, most of the times, the tutorials, I guess, I might have already exhausted them.
Right. But you actually use the hardware in a lot of your projects?
Yeah, I use the hardware a lot. I mean, it depends on the project. So that one is a mini computer, like a full blown computer, and it makes it so easy to just like, oh, it already has Wi-Fi, or it has, it's an operating system, so it's easier to program for me because
Right.
that's how I was trained. But then there's microcontrollers where those are not computers. There's like, think of it like, I like to say this example like a smart fridge, and a smart fridge would have like the screen on the front, with like, I don't know, like apps that would like, oh, this is how much milk I have, or you can tweet on it or something like that, like an actual computer, it feels like. But then the microcontrollers would be the little chip that controls the temperature or the light on, light off. Maybe
right.
not
It doesn't
that
have
one,
to
but
be able
yes.
to do everything. It only has to be able to do what a refrigerator needs.
Yeah, like a very basic part that like just actual hardware needs to do. So there, you don't need, because the less amount of, I think it's just so that it doesn't, there's a lot less failure points. So if you have a thing that only controls a motor, then you're good, and you don't need any apps or software or anything else running. And I'm not trained in that. That's where I started playing with that would be closer to more like electrical engineering, which I am really into right now. But yeah, so that's, I think I used a lot of that too. So it's more about, I use Raspberry Pi or like mini computers as my comfort zone to get something done really quickly because I know how to use it. But then I love exploring more into like the electrical engineering world, where I'm like, oh, how can I make this dumber? And not dumber as in like the project is dumb, but like there's not a smart computer involved.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Oh, I love that. Oh, so many good resources that you've offered, and so much that you've kind of shared about the depth and the breadth of the work that you do. I'm curious, kind of what you see being on the horizon. Do you have any overarching goals? Anything that you kind of want to take on, especially given that it's been a hard couple of years, right? The pandemic has really changed a lot of people's experiences, and we're not we're not done yet. Like, we can't just decide that it's over and say that it's over, but there are some changes sort of on the horizon, and sort of some emerging experiences that we're having. So kind of what's next for you?
I think, well, for me is I just really want to keep trying, and I just want to keep trying to do this, like more like the higher level view of this mission of like, hey, I can build cool stuff not because I'm a woman, but in spite of it, kind of thing. Like, oh, I'm just a person, and I can, and maybe you look like me, or maybe not, but you know someone who looks like it's just a little bit, hopefully inspire people, and make it seem like, oh yeah, I keep all my mistakes on my videos so that people know that it's okay to fail as well. And there's part of a lot of failures to be able to build something. But anyways, I digress. I think I just want to keep trying and build fun stuff. That's a cool part of my job. Like, that's why I said, like, well, it's maybe 30% building and everything else. I think that everything else is for that mission of like showing the world, hey, we're here, we exist, it's a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the point that you made about failure, because it's so true. It's not even like I think we could even go further to say, it's not a bad thing to fail. No, it's a good thing you have to
Yeah.
fail. That's how science and
Yeah.
engineering works. Like, if everything just always goes right the first time, either you're probably not doing anything that's all that interesting. You're definitely not solving new problems, right? You're just kind
Yeah.
of regurgitating what other people have already shown you how to do. And yeah, how are you ever going to learn if you can't be present when something goes wrong to figure out how to then fix it?
Yes, exactly. I that's exactly right. So failure is so important, including my trying with YouTube, and like even that it
Right.
feels like a project. So
Oh, for sure.
yeah.
I mean, there's so many skills and talents that go into. I think about when I first started podcasting and I had no idea what I was doing, and I wasn't an audio engineer, and I would spend so much time
Yeah.
editing, and I was like, there have to be people who know how to do this more kind of efficiently. And of course there are. So once I could afford to pay them, that's what I did. But yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much any creator realizes that they have to wear a lot of different hats, not just kind of that one skill that they have focused their career on. So that's good to hear that you don't see an end in sight and that you want to keep pushing and keep pushing. So I want to ask then, Estefannie. I always sort of towards the end of my episodes ask my guests the same two questions, and I have had some young guests on before. I've had like the winners of the Regeneron kind of science fair on the show, and so very young,
Hmm.
like high school aged kids.
Yeah.
But most of my guests are probably older than you, and so I'm excited also about this kind of more youthful perspective. So they're big picture questions. Are you ready for them?
Okay. Yes.
All right, here we go. So when you think about the future in whatever context is relevant to you right now, so this could be very personal, it could be occupational, it could be societal, and to that end, it could be local or communal or global or even, I don't know, cosmic. So any context, there's no right answer. Number one, what is the thing when you think about the future that keeps you up the most at night? The thing you're most worried about? Maybe you've even developed some kind of pessimism or even cynicism. And then on the flip side of that, to end on a more positive note, where are you finding your hope and your optimism lately? What are you looking forward to?
Whoa. That's whoa.
Yeah,
Okay.
you take all the time you need. And if you need a big gap, we'll just edit that gap out and it will make it sound like you went, oh my gosh, I know the answer right now.
Well, I think I know. It's like yeah, it's scary. It's yes. What I'm very I became very cynical about my industry, like software engineering, and it's scary. I was in the industry for um 7 years, and it I learned I became very disillusioned.
Yeah, disillusioned
Yes.
for sure.
I had this idea of like, oh, we can change the world and make the world a better place through software somehow. And I was very excited about the cutting edge of new technologies. Wow, self-driving cars or this automation and machine learning and robotics, AI. So excited about everything, and it it felt like when I was in that world, I realized how much of it wasn't done necessarily correct. Um, Technically, ethically, humanely. Oh, so I think, yeah, it was a very harsh like reality hit when I realized what that was about. I think yeah, I became very cynical about it, and made me want to leave that world as well. But then it's like on the flip side, it's like the same weird drive that I got when I was like also very sad and disillusioned about the fact that in college, women were leaving because yes, it was very hard to be in that environment, very very hard. And it was awful, and I was scared, and but I was like, no, I can do this. Let's prove them wrong, and let's fight for our spot. Let's take some space. And so I think that same, whatever that is in my brain or in my heart or wherever that is pushing me to I guess it's part of me trying to show like, no, it is cool. I can show you there is hope. I mean, maybe I don't feel the hope, but I can show you that there could be hope, so you feel the hope. Hopefully,
yeah. So sort of two sides of the same coin there. The institutional barriers and maybe just some of the complacency that has taken place because it's always been the same voices in the room, always the same individuals making the decisions. As much as that is causes that disillusion, it also makes you want to go, no, hell no, I'm not going to stand for this. I'm going to affect change.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah. So we need more of us out there. More women.
Here, sister.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Well, Estefannie,
Yeah.
before we go, I'm wondering, is there anything that that you were hoping to be able to chat about? Anything that we didn't really cover through this time that we spent together today that you want to make sure that we mention?
I'm not sure. I think um I did mention a little bit about my favorite brand that I'm working with. I'm not sure if I should speak more about it or if because I think the segue I wanted to get into with that, like, yeah, we need more of us out there. That's why, like, I really like that mission, Olay's mission of like having more women by 2030. Like that, I agree with them. I want to be part of it. Let's do this.
So tell me a little bit more
Yeah.
about that. Like how can individuals who are listening who feel the same way you do, how can they get involved? What can they do?
I think I think definitely supporting the people and the brands that are working towards these kind of missions of bringing more women into STEM, then I think that's a good step. I think spreading the word is good too. I think as long as we know that we're out there and we exist, that will help that mission. I think the more we expose little girls out there or teenagers out there that, it's cool to be a scientist, that you could be a chemist and make cool, like, facial products, or you can be a computer scientist and also like do machine learning about any kind of data, or like robotics or AI. I think it's just exposure. I don't think there's enough exposure still in like pop culture specifically. Like I know we're trying like on our platforms, but like I wish I don't just spreading the word. I think people need
kind of getting that mainstream exposure for sure, like in just TV shows, on streaming platforms, on the places where people consume information. But the good news is more and more people are consuming on social media and on these different platforms like YouTube and podcasts. And so there is that sort of younger generation where they're like, what is a television show?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Where they're like, oh, a TV show? Is it going to be on Netflix? And you're like, oh.
So true. Yeah. Oh,
right.
well, gosh. So tell everybody listening then, Estefannie, how can they learn more about your work? Where can they follow you on maybe social media or on the web and kind of and YouTube and learn more about you?
Yes. I think it's just my name. It's spelled weird, so I took advantage of that because I'm the only, I feel like I'm the only Estefannie out there. I'm not, but I feel like that spelling specifically. So it's just my name. At Estefannie, GG on Instagram, at Estefannie GG, or just Estefannie, Google it. You can find my YouTube, my blog. My blog is estefannie.com. And that's the blog where I write all my tutorials and I share all the code. So it's just my name.
Awesome. And of course, this content is kind of friendly for folks our age and older, but also for younger kids too, right?
Yes, everything is family friendly. Yes.
Love it.
Yes.
All right. Everyone go check that out. Well, Estefannie, thank you so much for spending time with me today. It was a real joy.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. Same. Likewise. I love this. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And everyone listening, thank you for coming back week after week. I'm really looking forward to the next time we all get together to talk nerdy.